Welcome to You Heard It From Us, the podcast where adventure meets advice. I'm DNDWife, your artistic storyteller and dedicated miniature painter.
And I'm Dungeon Master Eguile, your seasoned storyteller with a flair for epic tales and a passion for bringing our worlds to life. Together, we are a couple of nerds.
Whether you're navigating the depths of the dungeon or the dynamics of your gaming table, we're here to explore the vibrant world of tabletop role-playing games with you.
Each episode, we dive into topics that every gamer can relate to, like, is there really such thing as too many dice?
Or how to keep the peace when your co-adventurer is also your co-pilot in life.
We share our own trials, triumphs, and tales from the enchanting world of Extraeus and beyond, all while connecting with you, our amazing TTRPG community.
From community polls to social media shoutouts, we want you to be part of our adventure. So grab your favorite set of dice
and join us as we embark on a quest to make your tabletop gaming experience more fun and meaningful.
This is You Heard It From Us,
where every episode is an adventure.
Hey there, adventurers. Welcome to You Heard It From Us, the podcast where we dive into all things TTRPG.
And I'm DM Eguile, your storyteller and game master, here to share tips, tricks, and tales from the tabletop.
I'm DNDWife, bringing the creative spark and narrative magic to our discussions.
Every episode, we tackle a new question or topic that's shaping the role-playing community, from epic world building to managing in-game dynamics.
So whether you're rolling your first die or crafting your next campaign, pull up a chair, grab your dice, and let's roll into today's topic.
So today is more, I would say, probably DM-centric, in essence, as this is a DM-specific question that I kind of don't get a lot of opportunities as, at my particular table, I think only about one or two of you have actually ever really DM'd before. So this tonight's question we were looking at, what we posed to our community, was DMs.
Yeah.
How do you set up your table? You're essentially your DM space.
Yeah.
That sacred zone behind usually a screen.
Everything is run.
So the mystery where the minis hide and the DM rolls his evil dice and
where the monsters come from.
And everyone, I find, kind of has a different way of going about it, right? Like everybody has their own thumbprint when it comes to how does your DM table set up.
Yep.
And so we kind of thought, hey, this would probably be a good idea to ask the community. Now, obviously we don't have very many DMs, but it was kind of an interesting to see kind of at least the initial responses from the few DMs we had.
Oh, yeah.
But as always, we like to look a little bit on us first. We like to see kind of what we've experienced, because as we've said over and over in this show, it's a lot of learning from your mistakes and the mistakes of others.
Yeah, so we'll be covering a lot of your your growth with your DM setup and how it's evolved over the years.
I mean, I think we've spoken on previous episodes where we went from minis and we went from little pieces of
paper, laminated
construction paper all the way to giant minis that we're now using. So the same is really to be said about the DM space that I've created for myself. And then we'll open up to our community, which unfortunately wasn't a whole lot this time, but at least from the few DMs, we've kind of come to at least some sort of a consensus. As always, we like to give a little bit of our personal tips and tricks when it comes to the topic, the things that we've dealt with, handled, and that maybe they'll help you out at your table, or in this case, setting up your DM space.
Some things that work for us and that might work for you.
So, as we've said a few times now, we're coming close to our 7th year of being into D&D.
Yeah.
And, I mean, I remember when we really first started, we were on this kind of tiny, I think it was like a 3-foot by 3-foot square card table.
Yeah, it was very small.
And it was just some of those laminated pre-maps that are just gridded that you can draw. So I had drawn a bunch of the maps terribly.
Yep.
And then we just had the little bifold, I guess, trifold screen
the plastic one,
that came in the Minds of Pen Delver starters guide, right? And that was really it. That was all we had for a very long time because, I mean, obviously, as a lot of people who are veterans to this, hobby, we all know that this is a very expensive hobby.
Oh, yeah.
People play D&D for a long period of time, not because they want to play it for a long period of time, because that's how much it takes to just afford to buy buy enough stuff to play D&D,
yeah,
right?
Seriously.
That's how I feel sometimes.
At least when you're running the tables.
Right, so we really had a really slow evolution to our table because it really was at first, I mean, we were really traditionalists. It was, opening
pen and paper.
shaking while I'm opening up the intro guide, and there's just pads of paper everywhere. But then, like, as we learned and grew, it got a little bit more complicated as we go.
Yeah,
because
we couldn't just keep doing the
right,
plastic.
It was so much more information that I had to handle. So I really wanted to start kind of getting more and more. And really what it came down to was just almost my own experience.
Yeah, a little bit.
Right. It became more of like you start to learn as a DM, okay, what's important? Like what information do I need? And what is just something that I maybe look at every now and then, but I don't need to have in front of me. And I think one of the things that really kind of stood out to me was where I kind of learned this aspect of how important kind of the DM space is. And that it wasn't just, okay, this is my space. And, so that I can be in secret and I can have my little hidden thoughts. Yeah. But it's such a tool for the RPG experience.
Absolutely.
I mean, I know there was plenty of time, especially in the early game, where I was using it as kind of this kind of vision board, but I was using it to just do all the cutouts from the Curse of Strahd campaign, right? And I remember, I think you really liked that aspect for it.
Oh, yeah. I loved being able to interact, so to speak, with some of the things that you were doing. And you would present certain people or creatures that were extremely important in the front to make sure that we got a good view, knew what we were up against.
Right, like, because as most of us have seen those little trifolds, they have kind of like the little binder kind of protector sliders. And I had made just these little construction with, glue sticked pictures. Yeah. And so I could swap them out, each time. And it's like, okay, it's city folk now. Let me put them in.
Right.
And so when I had to mention somebody or do a horrible voice, I could just be like, it's this person right here. And I could like click on them in the front of the front of the DM screen.
Absolutely.
And I think that's really when I started to really notice where it's like, oh, this isn't just about creating a separation or giving me my space to work. Yeah. This is really a tool that I can use to really increase that kind of excitement and that atmosphere of a table.
It could be as much for the players as it is for the DM.
Yeah. And so, as we went along and kind of grew, not only as D&D players, but also the table itself, we eventually got one of those kind of I call them old-fashioned. I grew up with them.
You're right.
The leaflet tables where we could take the leaves out. So now we have a table that, can be shrunk and grow.
Yeah, I mean, it stays at like a little 4-seater and then grows to an 8-seater.
Even with that, though, you always find yourself struggling for space. So for me, we ended up getting like a little pop-up table.
Yeah, that was fun.
So this now, it's even more feels kind of separated sometimes because now my set is this kind of separate table.
Yeah, you're not even in the same space.
Right, connected to the table. But that really not only gives me the space that I need to set up everything and have enough, but I've incorporated a lot more of like, audio visual technology. I have my laptop now behind the screen because
it became necessary.
and that way I can keep track of things, player cards, information. I mean, just
playing music.
I don't have to pull my phone out to Google a spell. I can just keep a spell sheet out. And that really helped, me because, at the same time, like your DM space should be about helping yourself run the game smoother.
Absolutely.
You could have this like crazy cool looking screen and all these things and smoke that comes out, but if it's so distracting that it's actually causing you to have a harder time seeing your players, or your players are too busy looking at all the bells and whistles that you've created now, it's like toddlers with a keychain. Like if you give too much excitement, they're not going to really focus on the game at hand. And I know there's been moments as we've grown where I've had some more extensive player screens where a player had made me one out of foam that looked like a castle. And unfortunately, they learned the hard way you can't use spray paint on foam.
At least not without a couple of layers of Mod Podge.
Yeah, right out sealing it first. So it got kind of warped, but then it created this really cool effect.
Yeah, actually.
But then when I would use it, it was kind of too cool, and people wanted to use the dice roller, or people kind of wanted to look in the details. details.
Interact with it.
So then it was like, hey, guys, pay attention.
Yeah.
I know
Stuff's
it's
going
cool,
on.
but it's not quite, what I'm looking for when I'm creating, a table space.
Yeah, it should be a tool and an aid, not the main, focus.
But I always, for me, the DM space, like I said, is a very personal space, but I also think it's kind of like a totem space, right? In a sense that, a lot of my players over the years, players who no longer are at my table, I've received a lot of gifts.
Oh, that's true.
Right. I've received gifts of whether it's a DM's mug, a set of dice, DM screens.
Yeah.
I mean, heck, recently one of my players gifted me a flat screen TV and a setup so that we can now have a kind of virtual tabletop at home. But I think that's kind of the other great thing about DM setups, right? They kind of represent your connection to your players, right? I imagine when like a person like Matt Mercer or Brandon Lee Mulligan kind of puts out their stuff, each one not only has a story in of itself, but also represents the trials and tribulations of the dungeon master.
Really, yeah. It shows kind of what they've been through and what they're going towards.
I mean, right. I mean, you've seen now, you've been a part of every campaign, every story. And how does it feel when you see kind of the differences between the DM screens and the DM setups?
Oh, yeah. It seems so much more high tech now compared to what it was before. I just remember all of us huddling around a table trying to make sure that it didn't topple over and or that we didn't smudge the map. And a lot of that was also you having to be at the same table as us. And it was such a small table. We really had to, you were so limited in space. You had to use a chair, I remember, to put like extra books, anything else, extra papers.
I find that you just never have enough space as a DM, right? Like it's just, there's so much you have to maintain and overcome and have on you at a moment's notice that, I really wish I could just have like a whole second giant table behind myself.
Yeah, because even now, with our current setup, you have a whole table to yourself, but you still use all the counter space around the kitchen counters.
Little coffee station becomes my little storage space.
Yep.
Yeah, and that's, that is kind of the thing. And it's one of those things where I think like every DM also has to come to like a kind of a moral and ethical quandary of like, it's never going to be perfect.
No.
Right? Like you're going to try and I've tailored mine. I have a whole sound system. I wire myself up with a microphone. I have a microphone that hangs over the table. In my own side, but there's still things that like I wish I could have. Like I've always wanted, like the new trend is the DM screen with the monitor built into it.
Yeah, that's cool.
I would always love to do something like that. Unfortunately, like I have a laptop, it's kind of limited with how many outputs I can have. So there's things where it's like, unless we switch everything up, we're never gonna quite go that way, right? And so I kind of like that it is one of those things where for most people it's never really complete.
Right. You do kind of keep working on it over time. And I think it's a little more special that way because it's never complete. So you never feel like you're done.
Yeah, and that's the thing too. And I find, for me, I guess it's that like big thing where like each campaign you got to change it up, right? It's like a kindergarten or school teachers where it's like each year let's change. We're gonna
move up the decorations.
Instead of blues, we're using reds this year. And so you learn over time, and so it's really more tailored to your players. And so like as you play and as you get more confident as a DM, you're more understanding of like, okay, what is stuff that they're going to like go ooh and ah, and what are other things that they're just going to play with, make noise, and cause a problem with?
Right. You
and
really have to balance.
Yeah, and because like you sometimes, you want like, oh, I want all these skulls and all these little things. But then there's also that other thing that I learned over time was that if you have a lot of tchotchkes, that means every time you have a session, all those tchotchkes got to come out.
Yeah.
And every time you finish the session, all of them got to go right back. And so it's one of those things where it's like, hey, you want to find that balance of it looks good, it serves a purpose, and it helps you do your job.
Yeah.
And I kind of found a middle ground for that myself over these years.
I think so.
I know that no matter what, I'll probably always be trying to find something more. But I feel like that's kind of always the quandary of a DM. I don't get to make players. I get to make a DM space.
Yeah, that's true. But I think it's gone a long way towards helping the gameplay as well, at least in terms of us as players. It feels so much more seamless now, I think, than from before, because obviously when we were starting out, we don't have all the gadgets gadgets. We don't have everything. So it takes a little longer to transition from, it's like a play, right? You have to take some intermissions to reset the board.
So that's a pretty good way to look at it. That's a pretty good way to look at it.
But with all our new technology, it's really become this sort of seamless integration of the story with audio and visual aspects even that are just surpassing what we used to have, I think. So it's just great to see it improving.
Yeah, and so, I kind of knew this was going to happen, as we reach out to the community. I kind of know that for most cases, I'm kind of the only DM.
Yeah.
A few of my other players have, and we've had a few of the new people who have joined our Discord be interested in DMing, but it is such an intimidating thing that not everyone's going to jump into it.
Right.
But we figured, hey, let's try it.
Right,
so we asked the question, Dungeon Masters, how do you set up your table? Do you use nothing? Do you just play out in the open and just kind of let it all fly?
Right, let it hang out.
Do you use something like a store-bought screen, like comes with a pack, or something that you bought on Amazon real quick, usually plastic?
Right.
Or do you do a whole custom setup from scratch and all these little bits and bobs?
Yeah.
Obviously, pretty low response rate. I'm pretty sure it was just a couple of us.
Yeah, just a few people, but that's to be expected.
As I kind of also assumed, in case of most of the DMs that I know have been DMs for a while, they all reported it was custom.
Yeah, that's the goal, essentially.
I get that, right? Like, it's especially if you've been a DM for a while. I mean, after a couple of years, you're gonna naturally have more, right?
Yeah.
But I think it's kind of interesting for that thought process of like, when would you use these situations? So like, one kind of came to my mind with the whole like out in the open, like
no DM screen,
was more of like when you did your one shot, because it's so a low scale. It's not
I didn't really need a DM
you didn't really
screen.
need it, right? Like, so when you came up, it was more of, well, I want to see what's going on because that's more important to me. Is when you were a dungeon master, right?
Oh yeah, I mean, and I had also set up this whole little like fairground area that it required me to interact with it too, so I had to kind of be in the area manipulating things, so I didn't really need a DM screen for that. I just had the notes for the one shot, but that is just a one shot, so I don't want to sit here and be like, that works for every time.
I know, right? And so so it is one of those things where like I really do think that it most DM, it's going to be custom just because. Plus, and I think it relates to the idea of that, like, DMs, there is no real, like, one campaign either. It's not like we're all following, like, Baldur's Gate 3, so everyone kind of knows, hey,
what's going on?
What did you do in Act 2? You
right.
know? So because of that open-endedness, you never really know what you need. So you're always going to want to kind of try to get some sort of, custom setup so that way you can be tailored to your players.
Absolutely.
But really, I think the and we say this a lot, there's no right or wrong way.
Not at all.
I always want to preference that when we talk about some of these more, hot button topics.
It's really all about preference.
Yeah, and like we really talked, even like what we learned through my experience was this, like, you got to know your players. You got to know you as a DM. And learning those techniques really help you create that unique dungeon master space for yourself.
Absolutely.
One thing, it's like that always kind of looked like I tend to have kind of like long sides, but I had a few players that tended to be like looky-loos who would like to kind of sneak a peek. I'm talking to you, Milo, if you're listening.
Check real quick, see what the dice rolled.
So I have like kind of, I really kind of force the walls on the side of mine. So that just shows like little customizations that you have to make to kind of tailor to some of the fun things that you kind of experience.
And I think that's also why the second table comes in handy a little bit sometimes, because you don't get as much of the looky-loo when it's further back.
And I mean, and I think the biggest thing, and I don't even know why I didn't talk about this because I'm literally sitting in it, is the DM chair, though.
Oh, yeah, that's important.
Right? I'm surprised that I didn't talk about it, even though I'm like actively sitting in my chair. But it really is, that's the other thing, too, is like you want to make sure you have a comfortable chair. Like, sometimes your players sitting in uncomfortable chairs can be funny and it keeps them on edge, but you as a DM, you got to pamper your own.
You need the comfort.
You're behind and need some softness while you sit. Even though most sessions I find I stand.
A lot of it you stand.
I mean, I'm just like Matt Matt, and he'll sit for a while, but then you just can't help but stand.
Really, because the excitement,
especially
just you want to be in it. Yeah.
Right. So really, as always, we kind of knew what we were getting into when it came to asking our community. So, I mean, if you are out there, any DMs out there there in the ether space, have any type of unique setup that you're either proud of, made yourself, or perhaps a family member made something for you, let us know. Join our Discord, shoot us out a question. Let us know. That way we can see kind of more. We're always trying to kind of increase our community, and I would love to have more DMs out there who could give their opinion on the different subject matters.
Heck yeah, and we'd love to have more DMs on the Couple of Nerds Discord as well, just to give us that extra perspective on things, you know?
Come on, DMs, where are you at?
Where are my fellow DMs at?
Right? So, as we always try to do, obviously, we've been doing this for a while, but there are always people that have been doing it way more than us.
Way longer, yeah.
But we always believe that it's so important to kind of hear some of the stories and the mistakes and the accidents and the successes and the freedom and all from other players.
Absolutely.
So we like to always, as always, give a little bit of practical tips on how we've set ourselves up. And so in this case, myself, because I'm the resident DM. But really, like I said, I think my number one, even though I didn't really think of it too soon, was a chair.
Yeah.
Your seat really matters, how you can use it too. And a lot of people don't think about that. I have a computer chair, obviously, right? The computer chair goes up and down. I can, if I want to hide myself behind my screen and kind of create more of a mysticism of, they're talking to someone behind a door.
Right.
Well, I can then drop my chair without doing anything below eye line.
Yeah, especially if you're sitting for 4 to 8 hours, a chair is necessary.
It also creates really funny moments where you watch your DM slowly sink behind his DM screen, and then a voice comes out, and then he raises back up. I just think it's little like nuanced ways that you can totally change your RP experience by just using a feature built into your chair that you normally wouldn't use like that.
Yeah, and I think it creates this really cool sort of narrator effect for the DM, where they are this sort of disembodied voice sometimes that we don't know who is talking or from where.
I imagine it's got to be a little extra step hard for you, obviously, because like the person giving the voices and the faces like is your husband.
You would think so, but I have a pretty active imagination.
I tend not to look at you during sessions just because of that fact. I know that like where you sit in comparison to the player of Bricky, he usually finds that I'm staring at him, but I'm not. It's just more because like I cannot look at you.
Right, so you're looking elsewhere.
I know I'll break. I mean, you're my wife, and I can't even flirt with you because it's just I get so awkward, and it's like, oh, I don't know, are we gonna laugh?
Right, you never know.
So it's kind of funny, but it does help, right? Like, and it's such a simple trick that someone might not even think about because they're sitting in a computer chair as well.
Yeah, you just never know.
Right. And another thing for me, and it's a big one for me, I grew up as an AV kid, and all that. So, audio and visual is a big thing. One of the things I've always wanted to do is put a screen in my DM screen.
Oh, that's the goal.
It's kind of the new trend right now, and it's kind of the things. And I think because that provides even a cooler portal for information.
Absolutely. Just like when I was talking about the cutouts that you used to put in the DM screen for Curse of Strahd, this would just be like the level up to that, I think. Yeah,
because then I could switch them out in an instant, show monsters or just like cool video effects. Yeah. I saw one where it was like it looked like, the bow of the ship, like you were like standing on it Titanic style.
Oh, that's
cool. So like the DM's talking about, like, oh, you're on a ship. So every time you look at the DM screen, you're seeing the front of the ship casting over the water.
Oh, right? That's beautiful.
Man, that is such a cool way. And the way you kind of tie that in, which I personally, I don't know. It's still a new thing, but I am liking the idea of the dungeon scents that are going on now. Have you heard about these?
A little bit, yeah.
These new, more immersion. Yeah, they're like these kind of like scent sticks, and they go into this device, and you're able to kind of like shoot out mist of different smells, whether it's campfire or forest. Cool. And I think that's another step that you can do that's kind of like out of the box, right? So like, for an instance, the forest is burning down. Now you play a campfire smell or something, or burning forest. So beautiful. And it totally, I mean, we know that like scent is such a trigger.
Absolutely.
And so that's another way that you really wouldn't think of. And now in essence for us, we tend to do like food as a trick that, right? If you cook some food in the oven, some cookies or something, and you're like, oh yeah, you're in this witch's house, she has cookies, and then you open up the oven just to make a cookie smell in the house. There's a lot of ways you can also do it yourself.
Right. You don't have to buy the scents.
So it's a really cool thing. And one of the other things, like our third tip on this, and this is something that we've used now and we swear by it. buy a separate portable desk.
Absolutely.
This is the pop-up desk.
It is a must-have.
We picked it up on Amazon for like $40. It's just a little cheap. It's a desk that folds up flat.
It's super convenient.
And it reminds me of like the old TV dinner stand.
Yeah, but trays, a little bigger and nicer.
And it has like a second tier, right? We'll show a picture in our Discord for people and a link to where if they want to pick it up. We're not sponsored in any way.
No, not at all.
If we would, but if we were, but that table, it just kind of allows you now to always know, one, what your space is. You're like, okay, all of here is where I go and I can set this up.
Yep.
And I think the biggest thing I like about it when you do that is you're independent from the table.
Yeah.
You guys bump the table all the time.
So much.
And so when you're like balancing dice or minis or stuff and you have everything precariously put out and then someone slams into the table.
Or you have an hourglass going.
And everything falls or, having yourself on a separate table setup really helps you kind of separate yourself, creating that space, and then you kind of have a little protective bubble.
That's a good point. That's a very good point.
Right? So it's like that little protective bubble means a lot for a dungeon master. Oh, yeah, because
us as players, we're constantly getting up to go get drinks, go to the restroom, get something. Who knows?
Yeah, but I think where I want to end, though, and most importantly, in like my fourth tip as a DM, is just make it your own, right? Yeah. There's no right way. There's no wrong way. Like if you want to have like every bit of your character, your player sheets all over the board, do it.
Get it done.
I don't ever see there ever being a bad thing for anything that makes you a better DM.
Right. The whole point is that it helps you.
Yeah. If the goal is always to provide a more immersive experience, of a better like closeness, or allow you to DM because you might be a little nervous of talking in front of your friends in a strange accent. Yeah. Well, if you can just duck down behind the DM screen for a little bit,
have a little privacy.
You can do the craziest voice and no one can see you making the face. Then you can pop up and be like, I don't know where that came from. It wasn't me. You didn't see me do it, so obviously it wasn't me.
Right? Must be somebody trying to get your attention.
Right? And I think the other thing too is I like technology. Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's my thing.
Yeah.
But I also have seen the glories of the simplicity of D&D as well.
It can be nice.
In that I think sometimes going back to the roots, in which we have in terms of we don't allow phones and stuff like that. And that goes the same with your DM your DM side. You don't have to have all the bells and whistles. Yeah. You don't have to have an iPad. You don't need to have sound systems.
It's fun, but
it's
really
not necessary. You just need to have whatever you need to play the game.
Exactly.
So whether it's just a pad of paper, some laminated sheets, that's still great. You're going to have a blast and still have fun. It's just one of those things that it's like, I guess it's like the real way to, like, I equate it as like a car, right? Like when you're first starting out, you'll take anything with four wheels and will drive.
Yeah.
Later on, you start looking at, okay, I want the LE package. Right. I want the backup camera and the screen in the inside. It's that same kind of thought.
It's a sports version.
Doesn't matter, though. It still gets you from point A to point B. Except for the other one gets you there in a little more style. But as always, as like I always try to say, and I think we've stretched this, and it's been one of our main monikers, there is no one right way to anything in Dungeons and Dragons.
Absolutely. It's all about preference, comfortability, because that's the biggest conducive thing towards having fun in the game.
Yeah, and so like I talk about my history in that, we started off very low key, we laugh when we see the pictures because it looks so, it's like, okay, how could you ever have 6 players on a table that small? Everyone would sit in each other's laps. But back then that was us scrounging everything together so that we could play. And we still had a blast.
It was so much fun.
It didn't really matter at the end of the day. And so when we asked our community, but I feel like anytime we ask directly like dungeon masters, we're not going to get quite as many responses as from our players. But that's okay. Absolutely. Because that's really, I feel like, having conversations like this and having discussions helps other people who are a little nervous to be a dungeon master because they think it's some cool kids club, and if they don't do it right, or if they don't do it exactly like Matt, then their players are gonna be mad at them and yell at them, and then they're gonna go to Reddit and they're gonna talk bad about no
they're gonna be on YouTube.
It's such a fun thing because everyone is always on the same page and everyone wants to see everyone grow, whether it's fantasy or real life.
And I think the big takeaway is if you just go into something, anything really that you're interested in, with the sort of idea that you're going there to have fun, that you're just going there to make friends, or whatever your good goal is for that activity. That's what you should focus on, and try to, work through some of maybe the issues that might arise or some conflicts that might arise. That way you can get to the fun.
Yeah. And we share these tips, right? These are stuff that work for us. They may not work for you.
Yeah.
They may not even come close to what you deal
Right.
with. But we always love the fact that this community is all about coming together, sharing our experiences, and learning from one another.
Absolutely.
So if you have any tips, or if you have any ideas that you have for a table, some crazy design, I always love to see new ones that I can steal ideas. Please join our Couple of Nerds Discord. Come join us on there. You'll see all of our postings of our various DM setups, and we kind of rate and review each other.
Yep.
Come in, put your setup out there. Let us know. I need more DMs to be in the Discord.
Yeah, we want some fellow DMs in there. Give DM Eguile here a little bit of company. But thank you so much for joining us today. If you liked this episode, please remember to like, review, and subscribe the podcast on any of the preferred podcast platforms that you listen on, or on YouTube as well. We really appreciate it.
Oh, yeah. And thanks once again. I know sometimes these topics aren't always going to touch everyone, but we feel like it's always important to at least get a little bit out there and try our best to kind of share our experiences. And hopefully we can hear some more from everyone else, because I feel like that is a very important discussion.
So have yourselves a great night. Remember to have fun and enjoy yourselves.
And as always, keep rolling them dice.
Have a good night. Thanks for tuning in to You Heard It From Us.
We hope you enjoyed the adventure and picked up a few tips for your own gaming table. But the journey doesn't end here.
We'd love to hear from you. Join our Couple of Nerds Discord community, where you can share your thoughts, ask questions, and suggest topics for future episodes. Whether you're a seasoned player or just starting out, there's a spot for everyone at our table.
To keep up with all our latest adventures and episodes, be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Your support helps us keep the magic alive and connects us with even more amazing listeners like you.
And remember, you can find us on all major podcast platforms. Just search for You Heard It From Us and hit that subscribe button.
We can't wait to see you on Discord and hear your stories. Together, we can make the world of tabletop gaming even more magical.
Until next time, keep rolling those dice.
And may your adventures be legendary.